Michael, we're back.
We are.
And we have a wonderful guest today.
Oh,
I guess you feel comfortable because you
We're
kind
not
of
saying delightful anymore. It's wonderful.
Delightful. Yeah, we love
you
delightful.
need more adjectives.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our last guest is delightful, so we said delightful.
it was
but
so delightful. They actually called me. I need to call him back. Thank you for
tell me we're going to
reminding
ship it. I'm editing.
Yeah,
I'm editing.
yeah, okay.
I'm editing.
So, Nicole Lee,
Yes.
I'm so pleased to have you with us. I know you feel comfortable in studios. We're going to speak about it in a second. I saw you fixing the camera, making sure the lights.
First time in this room,
Yeah.
though.
First time in this room.
Yeah,
Exactly.
First time in this
Look at
room.
that,
I
look
hope
at
my shade on that part of my face is good. If not, I will
Okay.
like move around.
This is what happens when you have a lady on your show.
Yeah.
And
More
then-
lights.
No more like, details.
Competition.
Details.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
competition.
Competition.
And I love it. I love it
Yeah,
when we
it's
have
good.
ladies on the show.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do today, I'm actually gonna let you introduce yourself. Because,
Really?
Yeah, because usually what we do, we introduce, we give in the intro, but now let's.
Really?
We like to
Let's
try
just-
new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'm gonna say
Okay.
that your journey is blow my mind.
Oh.
Why? Because you did some things that are broken, seals. Being in finance, in
Yeah.
UBS, being a startup in a fintech, building your own brand community stuff. I'm just bringing a spoiler. Okay, I will let
It's
you.
okay. No, I just
Yeah.
go ahead.
And I will let you continue from here.
No.
So I
yeah.
think it's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I was texting Michael as well. I was like, why do you ask me?
Why not?
Why do you invite
Yeah.
me here?
Why not?
No, I think it's more to also understand from the perspective of the hosts, like why do you choose someone, right?
Well, yeah, and you mentioned this, and you can talk about it, so I don't get in trouble about it, because you said something about, do you have a hard time finding
Yes.
fun, interesting,
Yes.
and who want to go on
Yeah.
podcasts with us? And I would say yes.
Yeah.
Now it could be that it's that same thing when someone says, like, oh, they're speakers, you got 5, only 2, and like, I get it. It's not for lack of trying, but
Yeah.
what we find is some people will say no,
Yeah.
or they're not interested in it, or they don't feel like
Yeah.
they're podcast material. And then I tell people, well, what does that mean? We just want to talk to normal
Which
people
is fine.
anyway,
like,
right?
like my wife. I asked her so many times. She said, no way.
She would be
Yeah.
on a podcast?
No way.
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
And I
So-
think maybe I was like that before too,
Hmm.
right? Because being on someone's podcast means being okay to be a bit more vulnerable to talk about yourself. And in Singapore, especially, or in certain parts of Asia, we actually don't really talk about ourselves much.
I do, Raz and I do, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's a dude thing or just
No, I don't think it's a dude thing
Yeah.
too. I think it's how you grew up and the environment you were in and how you were raised and how the schools teach you and, what you're supposed to be in the society. So I think that it's very normal, I think, in Singapore for people to be a bit shy or afraid or unsure about themselves because a lot of people don't really know who they are. So if you don't really know who you are, if you're sitting in front of, two wonderful hosts,
scary.
Dudes.
Scary.
dudes,
She said tech dudes.
Yeah.
Before we enter
Tech
the show,
dudes.
she said
Tech
tech
dudes.
dudes.
two wonderful tech dudes,
a
and you're
label.
like, you're not really sure what they're gonna ask, right? Or like telling you to introduce yourself when they didn't tell you before. then you have to be pretty comfortable with who you are in your own skin to be able to respond to what you're gonna ask me. And you're not really trained to be like that, growing up in the Singapore education system.
Got it. But now you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that I almost grew up again. You know,
Mm.
yeah, after leaving the bank. I mean, so I don't want to, steal the. I don't want to.
No, because it's actually we'll ask. Like, you did leave the bank.
Yeah.
You did, as you call it, kind of start a different
Growing
path.
up, yeah.
What kicked this off?
Yeah, I think I didn't even expect to go to UBS because in my mind, I was not like a true blue finance person in the first place. I never was like that passionate about financial markets. You know what I mean? Like, who really, I was thinking like, I don't know anything about equities or bonds and that kind of thing. But the universe actually took me to a bank even when I didn't want to, because I chose to go into events after university, which was like the least expected thing that, my parents would expect or like my friends would expect me to. But it then led me to a bank. And I think when I said I grew up after joining or after leaving the bank, it was because, you know, it was a top bank, right? And it was absolutely top notch, structured, process oriented, strive for excellence, pretty much like Singapore. You know what I mean? And so it was very like you get sucked in, which is great because you then know how to have high standards for yourself and for the work that you do. But at the same time, it almost magnifies and amplifies this structured thinking of doing the things that you're supposed to do. And so leaving it was like, you know, being out of that environment where you're striving to be in this structured place, doing the best you can, but at the same time not really knowing who you are.
And then suddenly the structure is gone.
Gone, and you get thrown off pretty significantly, I would say. Yeah, it was a big shock to my system. And then I feel like I grew up again because I then had to think for myself and to know how to present myself in a way that's truly me, but in a more evolved version of me. Because in a top bank, you're comfortable. You know, you have projects, you have deadlines, you have people to report to, you have people you want to please, and you know, that kind of thing. And then suddenly you have to take charge of your role, your business in a startup, and that's all like all over the place, and you have to get it together in as fast a time as possible, and with as little resources as possible. And then suddenly, bam, you have to grow up.
The day before you made the decision,
Yeah.
take us to this morning, evening, I don't know when was it. What ran in your mind?
The
You
one
think,
to quit?
yeah, before moving to the, you know, to your other thing
Yeah.
from UBS.
Yeah.
What did you think? What should I tell others? What's going to be next? What was your concerns and what led you to, I need to do that?
I think when I made the decision, I didn't ask anybody. I think it was one of the first times in my life where I just made it by myself. And that's when I knew that it was really me who wanted it, regardless of what people said. And, you know, what was running through my mind was, what is going to be my story for the next even 3 years? Not even 5. I didn't even think about 5 because I was thinking to myself, do I want to stay in this exact same point in my life and just take a good salary and do the same things that I would normally do and be okay with that trajectory? And I told myself, no. You know, like where I was, similar to where you were before, you hire people and you see other hiring managers hire people. And then you see that, oh, they actually appreciate people who have been to other places before. Like the diversity of your CV actually makes people think that you're more valuable. And I looked at my CV and I was like, I've stayed in the same place for 12, 13 years. Am I actually that valuable? And I wanted to actually add more experience and diversity to my CV. And I was thinking if I could be more valuable, why not? Yeah.
And looking back on that action, that it makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And the following one in ADDX?
Wow. I would say 100% yes. It was the hardest decision, but also the most necessary decision I had to make in my career. Because I think by leaving the bank, a top bank, it just shakes up and wakes up every single thing that you never thought possible about yourself, about how you deal with people, about opportunities, because you're exposed to an entirely different ecosystem. You're exposed to the fintech ecosystem and digital assets, and you know, you're meeting people who are coming from different backgrounds, and suddenly your world just opens, your mind opens, and you realize that there's so many different types of people other than the ones that you were familiar with in the bank. So I would say it was a lot of pain, but it was 100%, I think, the best decision I made for my career.
And I think sometimes we do this with jobs and careers, that like it becomes part of us, or you know, like, come on, we go to anything. What do people ask? Especially in, what do you do?
Yeah.
Where do you work? Like, it becomes almost part of your identity, right? Especially if you're at some big recognizable brand, whether it's a bank or tech or whatever,
Yeah.
which UBS would be. And then you step away from that into something that, oh, I got to explain what I do, because I'm pretty sure at most cocktail parties you say, I'm at 880X, they don't know. And you might have to say fintech. Well, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
So how much did that lead to this other soul searching of like wanting to build the other things that you're doing to start something that isn't associated with something that's easily recognizable? Like, you now have to kind of pioneer something on your own, right?
It's a very good question, because I think I saw the move from UBS to the fintech actually as extremely positive because of the role. The role, and I think a lot of people underestimate it, the role allows you to almost be empowered to then step up into something that you've never stepped up into before. So it's not always the company that you're in, but the role which allows you to. And the role that I had at the fintech was a sales role. It was leading a B2C business, which I had never done before at a bank. So it was almost like I felt quite empowered to then take the opportunity to build my own personal brand, because it was almost an advantage to be coming from UBS into the fintech, because we almost needed someone like that to be able to have a bit of financial industry credibility and to be able to connect with the audience in a way that perhaps a bank couldn't. Because there are a lot of guardrails when you're in a bank. You can't really post whenever you want, right? In a company,
It's
whether
controlled,
it's
everything.
We know.
not just banks, but big institutions, you can't really post whatever you want. And when I was in the fintech, I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna post. I'm going to let people know that there is an alternative to investing. There are other ways. There are other platforms. And so, to answer your question, it was not the move did caused me to do soul searching, because even before I joined the fintech, I was reflecting on all the things that had happened in the bank, because I almost grew up there. And when I looked, we were talking as well, I started to reflect. I never really reflected that much about my 12, 13 years at UBS, because it was an incredible journey. And sometimes you don't give yourself enough credit of, how far you've climbed.
Or enjoy it. Sometimes you're not
You don't.
actually enjoying it, even though it's going well.
Because
right?
you're in the flywheel.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, you don't appreciate all the things that have happened to you, because you're almost always comparing yourself with every other person in the office, because, that person earns more. That person got promoted before me, and you keep chasing this comparison. But actually, where you're at is such a privilege. And yeah, sometimes it makes me actually a bit emotional. Like, it's you I didn't expect to go in there, but at the same time, when I was in there, I sort of made the best out of it. So yeah, I think leaving it has caused me to do soul searching, but in the role itself, in the fintech, it was the biggest trigger, I think, that made me do a lot of soul searching, because it was very difficult and challenging.
Yeah, sales isn't easy.
No.
It's never easy
No.
to get customers.
No. And I think, I would say it's not just getting customers, but I think getting customers with little resources and,
Yeah, you don't have all the budgets.
No.
And the advertising.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think you take for granted what you have in a big institution, which is budget, money, resources. And you can be the best salesperson, and if you don't have all these things lined up as well, you know that you can't succeed by yourself. And I think sometimes I felt I was trying to, and it was very difficult. Yeah, so that's when I started to learn how to manage myself better and to reflect, go in, reflect, introspect, and almost, become a changed person. Yeah.
So is this the authentic power? Where does that come from? Like, when did you start scheming on that?
It's through pain. Yeah, I think when different people have different triggers for awakening. right? Some people, the family member passed away, or they have an illness. For me, it was really changing jobs, and it was a very drastic change, more drastic than I thought. So I think it was very strange because I felt like I was becoming more of myself, but at the same time, I was in such pain. Yeah, and it was a very weird dynamic within me. And that's when I realized, like, when I started to, it's not many people you can open up to when you're in that zone.
Yep.
Because you're going through a lot, and not many people have been there, especially from your old world. So I realized that when I start to open up to people about my challenges, people started to respond and started to want to help. And these are like really people who came into my life. Like the universe sent people to come in and help me.
It's like total strangers?
Yeah,
or?
strangers, people I met at the gym.
Sometimes it's easier, when they're someone doesn't have the background about you, so
Yes.
it's unfiltered, no?
Yeah, I almost think that because, when you're in a big institution, you don't feel safe to open up to many of your colleagues because you almost see them, one, as sometimes as competitors. Two, you feel like whatever you tell your colleague might be then told to someone else, that it could affect your reputation. But somehow when you're outside of that big institutional, framework, and you've really hit the bottom that you realize, like, I need help. So yeah, you're right. Sometimes strangers, and I've realized one thing, it's not how long you know the person for. It's actually really the connection that you have with the person, and time is irrelevant.
Yeah, if you connect, it could have just...
Irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely irrelevant. Yeah, so I think by opening up, when you start to open up, that means you're also opening up the energy to receive help. And then I started realizing people started coming in with either similar challenges or have been there before, and was sort of helping me and supporting me and, cheering me on. And I mean, I also reached out to a therapist for help, and, that's when I also started to pour out more of, like, what happened in the past and that kind of thing. And it's super, super, super needed to then reach into who you really are, because from there you can then become the person that you are meant to be, rather than hide behind all the layers you grew up with. Yeah.
And once you've hit this spot and you've kind of come out, I would say, and said, okay, I'm different. What did that kind of awaken in what you started to experiment with? And because I'm guessing that's when you started the community.
Even at the fintech, I already had this idea of doing a podcast and building a community, because I wanted to talk about things we don't normally talk about. Your anxieties, the challenges you go through at work.
Give it an example.
Right. I think that when I started to tell people, strangers, about how stressful working in a startup could be, then I realized that every single person was going through something in their lives. And I was thinking that no one talks about it. Not many people talk about it in Singapore, in Asia. In the US, there are a lot of podcasts like this that actually people just go, they bare their heart, and, they're sort of encouraged sometimes to do so. But in Singapore, and I talk about it because I'm from Singapore, you hide it. You almost have to paint this, everything is okay. I have a perfect family. I have a perfect everything, perfect job, right? And everything seems to be okay on the surface. But then underneath it, a lot of people are stressed and anxious and face a lot of struggles internally between, looking for another career versus staying in the same one, or taking risks versus not. The pressure of you getting a house and then applying for a house before then getting married. All these things, people don't talk about it. And therefore I really felt a very strong calling to talk about it, because podcasts have helped me as well when I was going through a difficult time, to actually see different perspectives. And I was like, we should have more of this here.
Yeah, there's not a lot of it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of democratize your thoughts everywhere, anytime, with anyone that's willing to share.
Yes, yes, and we don't talk about it, and therefore, by not talking about it, you don't really know who you are. And I keep going back to who you are, authenticity, because if you don't really know who you are, you have all these expectations from your parents. You know, in Asia, family is a very big part of how you grew up, how you think, what job you have, the person that you enter a relationship to. Everything is so intertwined with your family. I mean, it's sometimes when I speak to people from the Western world, they're like, I don't really get it. How could it be? You're your own person. Why would you still listen to your parents? But I can tell you that 90% of Asians know what I'm talking about, because you grow up so intertwined
Do you
with your
think
family.
some of that is because you end up living together longer?
Yes.
Like, because
Big
I
part.
like the space problem, the expense. It's also, I think, probably has to do with even the birth rate, right? I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
I remember when I'm 20, I love my parents to death, but lived in California, and one, the house was big. Two, there was places to go rent. It wasn't a crazy expense line to maybe be on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I have space, right?
Yeah.
And then of course I'm not going to be that. They're not seeing who I'm dating unless I bring somebody. Oh, but when you live at home and you're
How
in
many
your
dates do you have?
I
I
go there.
had to ask.
Married young, divorced, started over.
Good.
But you know what I'm
Cool.
saying?
Yeah.
I think in Asia, especially you think of Korea, Singapore, all these places, you can't afford maybe to live on your own. So then that creates this almost pressure cooker of course they see everything. You're coming home every night, even though you're in your 20s, right?
It's a huge point.
Yeah.
It's a very, very important point. The longer you stay with your parents, the longer you don't know yourself, the longer you hide behind every single thing that you think that they want you to do, the longer you are trying to meet the expectations of them and to please them. So you're absolutely right. And some people might think, yeah, right, what's wrong? Staying with my parents is very practical. Yeah, practical. But that's why you don't learn what it means to care for yourself if you lost your job. Yeah, that's why you don't really know whether you even like to, I don't know, eat this versus this because your parents are providing it for you. There's so many
I'm sure
things.
parents hate me, but my advice when I have Singaporean interns I'm go overseas.
Yeah.
Just get out. Not from you don't love your parents, you don't want to see them. It's
Yeah.
more of go get some space.
Yeah.
And then that space will allow you to maybe appreciate your parents even more, but you also get to think about what you really want, which you maybe can't figure out when you're home, right?
It makes me remember when I was 21, 22, and I did a student exchange in France, in Bordeaux.
Wow.
Yeah, the city of wines.
There must have been some drinking.
So yeah, that for
Don't tell the parents.
that for off the
Don't
podcast.
tell the parents.
That for off the podcast. But what I didn't have the guts to do was to then say, I want to work overseas. I didn't have the guts to do that. I wanted to.
You wanted to, but you couldn't
I
tell them?
wanted to with all my heart, I
Wow,
think,
yeah.
because I had the experience of living alone in France. And I started to discover so much more of myself, just like, everybody who has lived alone. But I didn't have the guts to do so.
Hmm.
I didn't have the courage to want to live on my own. And I don't want to say it's a regret, because I believe that everything happens for a reason in life. Everything, every mistake, every path, every step you take is planned for you to then learn something along the way. But I think there's so many Singaporeans and Asians who are afraid to leave the comfort of the dependency with their parents, that it makes them not have the adventures and the experiences that they need to become a more fulfilling person.
What did you afraid of? What was your biggest fear? Because you said that you have the guts.
Mm-hmm.
Guts related to fear.
Yeah, of course.
What was the fear?
The fear was not being able to take care of myself. I didn't really know how to fully take care of myself, and because I had relied heavily on my parents for everything. And it was, I'm not sure if it was self-imposed or just how I was brought up, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you don't know. I mean, this is how you were raised to take care of everything. You have a home and you're afraid to then, oh, what if I can't survive? What if I get into trouble, you know? What if?
Yeah.
I think it's also how we grew up in this kind of more conservative society where it's like you're scared, you know?
Yeah.
You're very scared of doing things because, oh, what if this happens? And which is why, you know, right now for me, you never know it's not, you never know, you know, if something bad happens to you. It's more like you never know.
Because you didn't try.
Because you didn't try. It's more the upside that comes with it rather than the downside. We often see the downside.
Yeah.
But it's actually the upside that brings you to possibilities.
Yeah.
And it's a good segue to possibilities, because I want to go back in your time in UBS.
Yes.
When you were assistant director, I guess, and then you've been promoted to be director. How things happen? Because some of the people think that, you know, it's very hard to be promoted.
True.
If you look back, what were the actions that you took in a big corporate with lots of competition, as you just mentioned, looking around, how you made it? Give us some insights.
Yeah, sometimes I forget, actually, because it almost seems distant. But when you sort of, you know, when I saw that question, it made me a little bit, I know you keep using the word emotional, but you almost forget that it takes a lot to climb the ladder in a corporation. It takes a lot. To be able to do your work well, to navigate the dynamics and the layers, to be able to know the right people in the organization that can help you get that promotion, you know. Every function, every institution is different, but I think for me, I held very, very, very high standards for myself. And I think within the same function, I was even open to doing different roles. So I didn't stay in the same role, but I was sort of somehow asked or to do different roles within the same function. And I would say that I was being open to every single thing that anyone threw at me. So if the CEO says, who wants to start an investment webinar during COVID, is daily webinar. It's like we were in a room, I remember it. And actually the CEO, the APAC CEO was like, who wants to do it? Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's like, me. So I think every challenge, everything that was new, even though I had no idea, I wasn't ready, I said yes.
You went for it.
I said yes to every single thing, including risk management. I did risk management as well. And I think how I did it was really, I would say I wasn't even good at politics. It was being the best that I could be in every role that I was presented with.
Regardless of politics.
Regardless. And I was, when, you know, I told you that I was not like a typical person who was so passionate about financial markets. So I was very nervous actually when I entered the chief investment office of the top wealth manager in the world, right? I was intimidated because all these analysts with decades of experience were around me, and they know about, you know, the US market, they know about China, they know about gold, FX, and I was like, what is this? But I think it's almost like telling myself that I had to make it work, and downloading the Bloomberg app, learning, asking questions from the analysts, even if it sounded stupid, and just making sure that I was closing the gap on every single new thing that came to my desk.
Yeah, and we had Wendy Hogan on she's the chief of staff of Property Guru, and when we asked her about, because you labeled us earlier as tech dudes, we're two tech dudes, So I don't think we're the best people to be giving women advice, but we have daughters, so then we think about this a lot ourselves.
three.
He has three.
3 daughters and a wife. So yeah.
So it's like, and one of the things that Winnie said that really kind of punched me in the face, it was interesting because we had said like, what advice do you give? And she says, I don't give women advice to go be around more women. I give them advice to jump in and represent themselves better with men, because you're in a male dominated society when it comes to corporates and things like that. It was interesting advice because it was like, hey, that's true, because you're trying to project to a team of people, but whether that's the right or wrong answer, it's more like, what did you have to do in banking, primarily, especially in Asia, male dominated, right? Like, how do you kind of envision punching through, and what did you do that worked for you, and what advice would you give others to kind of navigate that?
It's a very layered question and a very personal question as well. And I possibly will give you a very layered response too, because it's not so straightforward. And different women will have different experiences in their lives that could tilt you to one way or another. So that's why I realized in the bank as a woman, I never for once thought that I was at a disadvantage. Interestingly, I never for once thought, and maybe because of how I grew up, or for some reason, I never felt discriminated in any way. However, I think subconsciously, I felt like I needed to act more like a man to be able to come across as firm and strong and independent and like a leader. And that was interesting for me because, you know, as I also interview other people on my podcasts and everybody have different experiences, is that you unknowingly take on a male role because you think that that is what is required of you to succeed, even though no one told you to do so. Yeah, you almost feel like you had to become this harsher person to be able to gain authority. And what I've learned now is that that is not always needed.
Is it because that's the role model? Like, it's what you see, and mostly you see men, and you know what I'm saying? Because we don't see enough women in these positions that's the role model. And then and I would say, without naming names, even in the Singapore ecosystem, you see some that have those roles and do exactly what you said. They come across as the tough woman that almost is like channeling a man versus maybe being more of themselves. Like,
I'm gonna try and answer this in S.
I mean, I'm probably getting in trouble by even saying this.
No,
I noticed that myself.
I actually love this topic because it's very close to my heart, and it's something that I today am trying to embody as a woman myself too. It's a very layered and sometimes some people call it sensitive topic, but I'm going to answer it this way. I think there aren't enough women role models who are in their feminine and yet show that it can be done.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I can't say that, I think. It's like,
I don't want to say the other way around either.
And my question is why? Is it culture? Is it why?
It's not just Asia though. Look at how many.
True.
Like, I think that's
I
think
what
the
I'm
cohort of female CEOs now, even S&P is
Yeah.
the lowest it's been in a long time.
Yeah.
Right? I could be wrong on this.
Yeah.
But.
I don't think it's about the numbers, but I think it's about in general the world holding space for the feminine to be a feminine rather than to be someone else she's not. And I think that it's not about blaming, you know, governments or society, but I think, which is why I'm very passionate about this, is about inspiring and empowering individuals to look into themselves and realize that you are a feminine. And you know, within each of us, it's a balance of feminine energies and masculine energies. So you would have feminine energies within you too, but less and I would have more feminine energy and less masculine, but it's about the imbalance that we have within us based on how we grew up, based on what we were taught, that makes us then think that we have to push this masculine up and this feminine down.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a rebalancing. And I think each of us needs to work on that and to realize within ourselves that it's okay to be soft, yet strong.
Yeah. That you don't have to yell.
You don't have to yell. You don't have to sort of pretend to be like a guy. And whatever that means, you know, it doesn't also mean that the masculine has to be this firm, authoritative person, because that might be a wounded masculine too. Yeah, so I think that the more different people would have different experiences in life, and I think you have to almost go through it to then. So what I had to do was rebalance myself. That it's okay to be listening and receptive and yet understanding. You know, it's okay to not shout and judge and still be, okay, I understand you, but this still needs to get done. And I still could exercise my authority in a humane way. Yeah, and I think that has been such a big learning for me throughout the past few years.
Yeah. It's a tough subject. I just a quick side note, I'd heard this and it kind of blew my mind. And there's a book about this where the lady's basically saying that the world mostly has been designed for men because men were in the leadership position to control most of it. And it maybe wasn't even like by design. And one of the things they related to, which I thought was so fascinating, that a lot of the early drugs actually didn't get tested on women all that much because women at any point could get pregnant or could, and they would have no way of knowing. So then they wouldn't. And literally it was like 90% tested by men. And so then, of course, as the women started using it, they had side effects that no one knew because they weren't equally tested. And she just used this as a very simple example to say the world's kind of designed.
Yes.
And I would say in the corporate world, even more so, right? And it's you know, only one brick at a time maybe does this stuff change. But
yeah, and I think we also don't realize how, you know, like becoming a mom affects your entire being too, because all these things changes the woman in terms of how she sees things. And I think, long story short, I think it's about understanding who we are as feminine, masculine within us, and to empathize with each person, that everyone is different, so that you can be a leader, you can be a entrepreneur uniquely, and not this one stereotype that we think we need to be.
Yeah. So if you, let's imagine that both of us females. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
And we need like a good advice because we don't know what's going to be our next step in our journey. Taking into consideration all the things that we just mentioned, what would be the two things you're going to suggest, Michaela and Raz?
You mean for a career?
It's Michelle.
Yes.
It was actually supposed to be Michelle.
Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Actually, you
Michelle.
asked my parents. It was Michelle or Michael.
Okay.
Michelle, Michael. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michelle. So Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay. Advice in terms of career
Yes.
as a woman:
Yes.
be your true self, and you need not always need to have role models. I know a lot of people are big on, you know, having this perfect mentor, you know, someone that you can look up to. You know, people often ask me, right? Oh, who do you look up to, or who do you want to be like?
They're like, it's almost like if you don't have that, you can't be successful.
When I said I don't know, they're like, oh, come on, Nicole, you have to have, right? I'm like, I don't. Is it that bad? But I think that you need not actually have someone you look up to, because, hey, you are actually the most unique person in the room. And so I would say to these women to not just is remember who you are as a person, because when you can be that most authentic version of yourself, and that means stripping away kind of how you grew up sometimes, stripping away maybe what you've learned as the best version of what a woman's supposed to be, or, you know, that kind of thing. When you strip all those layers off, you will then come across as so magnetic and so open to people, opportunities, places that you don't even dream of.
How much of your, I've been on this diatribe lately that about, because you talk about like being yourself and
Yeah.
you're being present. A lot of that is when you have face-to-face interactions, right? And so like you probably remember pre-COVID,
Yeah.
you're in office every day, right?
Yeah.
You never thought about that
Yeah.
there was another way. And then we've switched to this COVID thing, which was disastrous, right? And then we've kind of come back to this new norm is maybe somewhat work from home. But I would proffer that a lot of time you were growing in your career, you were present in the office, right? How much do you think this is affecting people's careers and being their authentic self and actually growing in there when we're not in the office that much? Especially, I think, even for women where maybe you project less, get lost in a Zoom call. We know how the men talk over people. It almost makes it worse, right? Like,
Yeah. I remember having to talk louder on the Zoom calls to assert myself, actually, now that you reminded me. Because people wanted to be seen when they were on Zoom calls, so they kept talking more than they needed to. And then you felt like the pressure to talk more too. But to answer your question, I think you have to go to the office sometimes. Yeah, because nothing can replace, absolutely nothing can replace in-person interactions. The energy that you get, like here, like now, it's very different if you were to interview me virtually.
yeah, that's why we've never
Yeah, that's the reason we
even thought
wanna-
about it. We have people that are like, oh, do you mind doing it? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, you could try. You could
Yeah.
try. I mean, like...
Oh, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, definitely
but
possible, but
it's not the same.
I would say that it's a balance between knowing what is important for you and then important for people who value in-person interactions as well.
Yeah.
Because everything's about energy. And if people cannot sense your energy, especially if you want people to
Which
see
just
it.
doesn't happen over.
No.
Zoom
However,
calls.
however, I've also learned the power of words. And I think I've learned that through my journey posting on LinkedIn, and how the power of your words and the energy that comes across through the choice of words and the emotions that come across in your words are extremely important. And if you're in a job that doesn't require you to turn up in the office all the time, you need to be able, even through your emails, to write in a way that properly represents your state of mind, your objective, the message that you're trying to come across in the most, not efficient, the most effective way possible. And I'm a big fan and a big proponent of the choice of your words, how it comes across verbally as well as written, because it matters a huge deal.
Yeah, people see you through
Yeah.
what you say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's speak about, this podcast is The Generalist.
Yes.
And if you didn't tell your friends you like it, you already can tell them, and then others can like it as well. But you wore so many hats. You had your UBS, you had your ADDX, you had your venture, community, posting, LinkedIn. You are a pro, speaker, coach. Are you a generalist or specialist?
At this point,
Yeah.
generalist. However, I used to think that being a generalist was a disadvantage. Now, I think being a generalist is a huge advantage.
What do you think, or why did you think that? Is it because someone says something? Is it hard to climb the ladder? Because this is one thing I keep trying to explain to people. Like, if someone told you it was bad, there was probably a reason because they need to fit you in a box or something. So I'm curious, like,
Yeah.
why did you feel that, and then what changed
Yeah.
for you?
Very good question. I think in the financial industry, a lot of specialists get paid more.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe it's not just the financial industry, maybe it's the tech industry too, or many other industries as well, medical. I observed that in order for me to get a higher pay, I might need to become a specialist. And I wasn't. And I actually felt sometimes that I wasn't enough. Like I couldn't really progress to where I thought I could progress because I was a generalist. It wasn't until I joined the fintech that I realized, like, oh my gosh, my vast generalist experience
useful now.
was so useful. And there's no way a specialist would be able to do what I was doing at the fintech. Because so much of being an entrepreneur, a business head, whatever that you do, even the podcast, you know, if you're hosting a podcast, you have to project manage. You have to be doing multiple things at once and to be able to wire your mind at different points in time, from content to sales, then to marketing, then to admin. It was a huge advantage for me at this point to be a generalist. However, I do think that at some point, and I'm very big on passion as well, you know, people in Asia often say that passion is overrated, but it is not. It is not. People ask me, why are you doing this podcast? You know, it doesn't bring you any money. Why are you doing it? But passion is about having a deeper purpose to reflect who you are. And I think that when you actually have passion and you hone and you start to find what your passion is, it's also about being a bit more focused on who you are and then maybe getting better at that. And I think I'm on a journey which is why I'm rewriting my story. I'm still rewriting it into finding who that Nicole is at the core, while knowing that she's a generalist. Who is that specialist within me so that I can hone that skill and then be known for that too.
You know, I think in big companies, because there's so many roles, specialism almost becomes default mechanism. But in a startup, suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, on any given day,
yes,
I'm doing these.
Yeah.
Wow, isn't it great that I had all this experience that I can do these 10 things? And
if I were to give, I don't usually give advice, but if I were to give any advice for someone wanting to move to a startup, is to be a generalist. You wouldn't survive if you were a specialist.
Or go there to be able to learn.
Yes.
Be
open to learning.
And then maybe that helps you when you go back in and specialize.
Yes.
Like there's
By the way, you can be a specialist if you are a backend developer.
True.
Or you are doing very specific
True.
things. I'm just
True.
walking through my mind through my 2 startup adventures. So
True. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. But even so, even if you're, a developer at the back, I think what a startup forces you to do is see the bigger picture.
Correct.
Like you're not just that person doing that thing. You need to know, where the company is moving to, what your founder is thinking, so that you know how to contribute things in a bigger way.
Yeah,
Agreed.
that's the motivation that we brought the developers. Hey, what you are doing is to serve this customer, and if you want, maybe we can take you just to meet them face to face.
Yeah.
To feel the field and go back to a computer.
Good one.
Yeah.
So I think these 2 questions are kind of intertwined. The notion of, you talk about Singapore and people don't talk openly, and there's the vulnerability and the maybe not speaking what's on our mind in one sense. And then we have this notion of textbook definitions of success. These 2 things kind of compress together because you want to tell your parents, I went to this school, I work at this bank, I did that. And you feel okay with that, even if you don't internally feel okay. Singapore is really known for this model, right? And you can see what's happening in society where we're starting to get a little more rich-poor divide even in Singapore, in my opinion. And then we're starting to see what's happening with the world and AI, the politics. Are we even teaching our kids, or even another thing, what success really is? And it should be more about yourself and how you are authentic versus becoming something because someone wants you to become that. Very evident in Singapore, right?
Super evident. When you
Yeah.
said textbook, it brought me back to the classroom. It brought me back to, when I was in school, in primary school, secondary school, junior college. It brought me back to how really many societies in Asia, including Singapore, is very textbook. And I think that, to answer your question, 100% we need to go beyond the textbook, because we need to start teaching kids about life rather than to fit the mold of the job that we think we want.
Or that you're being set up for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many things to say, but even for my daughter now, like I actually tell her, I actually teach her about how to be a person, like how to actually think about situations, about people, and how to connect to everything around you rather than aim for a certain job or a certain amount of money that you want to make. Because actually by discovering and learning how to go through life as a person, ups, downs, going in flow rather than resisting what's coming at you, then you start to really live life. So 100%.
And how she react?
Very well.
Mommy, it's too much for me.
No, I think that I've learned through my own experience as well that, memorizing things from the textbook, scoring, 100% for exams is not the point at all. It does not matter. It does not matter how well you do in your exams. And actually, to the certain extent as well, the school that you go to. Because I believe, every single person, regardless of their background, where they came from, their circumstances, everyone can change to be the person that they want to be. And that means being very conscious about yourself and about who you are to actually then become the person that you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give people some freedom.
I think we're gonna
Wrap
jump
up.
to our wrap up.
Yeah.
This goes
Okay.
fast.
It was fast.
Yeah.
I had like 10 more questions, but
Really?
Yeah, we can do it
Yeah.
afterwards and keep the mics up and then no.
Yeah.
But part of our routine, we ask, what would you tell your 20 years old that you know now?
You don't always have to be the good girl. Yeah, we grew up
What
thinking
is
that
a good girl?
someone who is, we call it in Chinese, 乖, obedient. Someone who is obedient to her parents, to her teachers, to everyone around you, to be polite, to say the right things, to do the right things.
Definitely don't want to interrupt. Do they say this to the boys too?
Yeah, of course.
Same thing?
Same thing.
Got it. So
Yeah.
it's not a female male thing. It's
No,
just
I don't think so.
Asian children thing. Be obedient.
Be obedient. If adults are talking, don't talk.
Yeah.
If there's certain, like, there are rules, and growing up here as well, there are many rules, and you have consequences if you break the rules. But I would tell my 20-year-old self, and to be honest, it's a very layered question as well, because when I was 20 years old, I didn't really know who I was. So if I were to tell my 20-year-old self, hey, don't be the good girl, she'd be like, what?
What are
Like,
you talking
wait,
about?
yeah, hello. I want to get good grades. I want to have a good report card of myself. But I would say you don't have to be the good girl, and you don't have to please everybody.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to please every single person. Yeah.
So do you do this with your daughter as well?
Yeah.
Try to,
encourage her to speak
Yeah.
up, even though she might be rude.
it's not a rude thing.
No,
it's
I know.
just-
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And I think that, encouraging kids to speak their minds in a very authentic way, because the kids at whatever age, 5, 6, 7, they haven't really been programmed by society. So they would speak their mind.
Mhm.
And I think the moment you silence them is when they would develop a habit to stop speaking
Yeah,
up.
it changes them even if you don't intend it to, right? 'Cause,
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's to encourage kids, young people, to actually speak their minds in a conscious way.
And I think that can lead to entrepreneurship. It can lead to creativity. It can lead
Yes.
to lots of many things.
100%. 100%.
Or just
Creativity. Oh my gosh.
self-discovery. Yeah.
I think creativity is absolutely underrated, and it is the gateway to possibilities.
Other things.
Yeah.
So I know you're big on wellness and fitness and stuff like that, but what do you do for yourself?
How do you know I was big on wellness?
Yeah, I watch your stuff. I read your stuff. Yeah, like what?
Oh yeah,
Okay, you're decent. Okay, we're not
Yeah.
gonna say you're great.
I believe in mind, body, soul. I believe in mind, body, soul. Never was like that before, but if you don't, everything is interconnected. It's not just taking care of your body, and that's what I thought. I thought just by going to the gym, you could get rid of your anxiety, but no, it does not get rid of your anxiety. It's the interconnectedness between mind, body, soul. So what I do is I go to the gym. They're not sponsoring me, so I will not say it. But I go to the gym to do high intensity workouts, weight sprints and that kind of thing. And I also take really long walks in the park. It's been so therapeutic to actually, there are not many natural spaces in Singapore, but I think they've done a very good job to create all these parks.
Yeah,
And I feel absolutely safe as a woman, walking in the park at 10 p.m. at night, for example. And I think taking long walks in nature clears your mind. I meditate almost every day, ranging from 5 minutes to 30. So meditation has been huge for my life, because it makes you go within and it makes you observe who you are and cut out the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and connects back to your heart. I journal as well. That has been huge for me, because we have a lot of thoughts in our minds, and sometimes you do need to process, like, let's say what I thought about this podcast today, or if I met someone, if I bumped into someone, like, why did I meet someone?
Let me guess, it was great.
Sorry?
It was great.
So the headline will be Tech
Yeah.
Dudes. Tech Dudes speak.
But I think it was great.
Yeah, I'll write my journal post today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome tech dudes today. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, and many other things as well, but yeah.
But it's a regimen, right? Like, yeah.
I think that consistency is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
If you are consistent on the wrong habits every single day, you will consistently become that person that you may not want to be after even a week or month or year. But if you consistently do the things that are healthier for your body, mind, and soul every single day, you will become the person that you envision yourself to be.
You can change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in between the walk in the park, the journal, the meditation, do you
And the
watch
kid.
and the kids? Do you watch something? Do you read something like that you want to recommend beside
Yeah.
your podcast, which is like amazing?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I stopped watching Netflix for a long time, by the way.
And move to Max.
No,
okay.
I stopped. I stopped it because a lot of it is fictional, and it didn't really add as much value to my life.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, because time is limited. I'll say it. Time is limited.
Yeah, there's only so
Right,
many hours.
yeah.
Energy is limited too.
limits.
So where you place your attention
Mm-hmm.
is where you place your energy and what you get back as well. So I actually purposefully stopped Netflix. However, I watch and listen to podcasts. Yeah.
Perfect.
And for me, the range, not all the time you get to listen to so many different podcasts, but I think what I've learned is you watch and listen to what matters to you and what helps you grow.
Correct.
Then you will start growing as well. So for me, yeah, I've been a big fan of different podcasts as well, to learn about spirituality, to learn about how you live your life, to learn about, how different professions teach you different things as well.
Give us something, one.
I mean, everybody kind of knows Diary of a CEO, yes,
Yeah.
but I'm going to tell you another one that I am currently following right now and that may not be as popular. It's called the Higher Self podcast. It's by Danny Morel, and I just listened to one with him and this gentleman called David Guillaume, and they talk about how, all of us want to manifest something. People want to manifest whatever, the dream car, the dream girl, the dream house, whatever. But you don't actually realize that in order for you to meet the frequency of these things, and the frequency, a lot of things we want are high vibrational frequencies, you yourself have to be able to expand your vessel to hold these higher vibrational frequencies. If not, these won't even come to you. If you can't expand your vessel to hold these frequencies, you will not be able to attract these frequencies in the first place.
No matter how much you
manifest,
them.
it will not come. And it's actually very reflective of my journey. By doing the inner work, by looking at myself, by changing the way I respond to situations, to people, I realized that I had started to attract different types of people into my life, it's quite incredible.
Yeah, hold on. Higher Self. Make sure it's in the notes.
Lovely.
This was fun.
It was very fun.
Went too
Thank
fast.
you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Good luck with
coming.
your own journey and
Thank
the next
you
steps.
so much.
Good luck.
Yeah,
Thanks.
really proud of you guys starting this podcast
Thank
and
you.
being brave to speak up. So keep going.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
no problem.
Appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you.